Hi guys and welcome back. Today I am working on something a little bit different. I've been feeling like I wanted to break out of the routine a little bit. So today I'm jumping in with something that's a little bit more balancing between art and craft. And I love that. I've been wanting to get a little bit more influence, I guess, in the work that I'm doing from other things that I used to find really inspiring. And I do think that changing your approach and what you're thinking about when it comes to art can really be very inspiring for moving forward and adapting and creating new things. So today I'm actually working on something that I loved working on when I was younger. I used to make these little paper dolls all the time. I loved creating these characters and then deciding what kind of personality they would have and what types of outfits they would need for the kind of world and adventures they would be on. So that's what today is. I'm just making another paper doll for myself. The first part, I'm working on the design, and that's all digital, but eventually I get to the point where I print it out and I cut her out and turn her into an actual physical paper doll. She certainly looks a lot cleaner and sharper as a like digital paper doll where I can just make the different layers of clothes reappear, but I did want to continue and make it into an actual physical one. I wanted to do that. It was a really very satisfying thing actually, just to finish this thing with my hands. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the design part of this piece. So this character is a vampire, and there are a few details that I could put specifically in her face that would help push that. So I did give her red eyes, and I played a lot with whether I wanted her fangs to show or not, but ultimately I do have her mouth open so you can see her teeth, but it's not really a significant design element. But I did give her just a little bit of blood coming out of her mouth to help push that a little bit. I gave her pointy ears too, which I love doing. I love doing characters with pointy ears, but also I wanted to push that type of a character into the color choices that I had for her skin and for her hair. I played around with a few different options for how I would color her, but ultimately I ended up settling on what ended up being my favorite, which is this really cool violet kind of color for her skin and then teal for her hair. And for more undead, spooky type characters, I really love going with these really saturated candy colored type colors that are on the cool side. So they have that like undead, cold blooded look to it while still being really bright and eye catching. So it doesn't feel too opposite of what the overall character's personality is, but it still tells a little bit more of a story as far as the fact that she's undead, that she's a vampire. And I always love looking for opportunities for designing tattoos for characters. It gives me a chance to kind of get into their mindset and think about what design choices would that character have for their tattoos and what are things that they find important that would be potentially tattooed on their skin. So I really love that. It gives me a chance, like I said, to think a little bit more like them and think about what kind of things they've gone through and what things they care about, and that kind of thing I find usually makes me feel more attached to a piece, and that usually means I spend a little bit more time on it and I spend more time thinking about the composition and the concept behind it. So any of those details that help me feel a little bit more personally adhered to that piece is a good thing for me. It helps me push beyond just a flat piece into something that's a little bit more connected to me, which I love in art. And it was kind of a funny challenge to run into when I started coloring her clothing, where suddenly I had to make sure that the colors that I was picking for each outfit looked good with the colors that I had picked for her skin and her hair, because that's a challenge that I pretty much never face. That specifically, that is, because when I'm working on an actual piece of artwork or a painting, everything is designed to look good in that single instance. So the colors that I'm picking are meant to reflect and connect with all the other colors. But for this one, since she was wearing different outfits and different colors, there was a lot more openness to needing to make different things work with that same set of colors. So I actually really liked that challenge. That's the kind of thing that by doing different challenges, different types of art like this, it really does get me thinking in a different way, and it breaks me out of getting into those ruts. So running into this challenge where suddenly I have to think of different options for clothing colors that would match a pre-designed color palette already, I feel like that kind of a challenge gets me thinking about how I can pair colors in the future that break out of this kind of circle that I seem to get stuck in, where I really like the same types of colors and the same kind of color relationships. So pushing myself beyond that in this kind of an application, I think was really helpful and really enjoyable. I love that kind of challenge. And a little side note, you probably noticed the shift in the way that these digital paintings look. So at the very beginning, I was working on my Cintiq on Photoshop, and then in the second half, I started colorizing this in Procreate. And I have to say, I really enjoy the way that Procreate puts these videos together, so that there's not all those zoom ins and zoom outs that I do when I'm working digitally. I do that a lot, and I like it. I think it displays nicely. But anyways, moving on from that. After I finished colorizing everything over on Procreate, I just imported that PSD file into my Google Drive and then back over into Photoshop, which, by the way, was really convenient if you didn't know that you could do that. But I opened it back up and I did a few little tweaks to some of the colors after I noticed them, specifically to that like A-line type dress. I changed the skirt to more of a black color rather than that purple, and I like it a lot better. It just feels a little bit more like what I wanted it to look like and a little less overall grapey. But anyways, I made a few tweaks like that, and then I compiled it and printed it out. I printed it on very thick paper. I actually don't remember what the weight of it was, but it was one of the papers it is the paper that I used for my prints over on my shop. So if you want to know, it's actually a really nice thick paper, which was kind of my biggest detriment when it came to actually cutting these out. So I did choose a thick paper because I wanted her to stand up all on her own, but having really thick paper also meant that it was much more of a struggle getting these really clean cuts. I had to push a lot harder, and I think looking back, I would have gotten a lot better results if I had slowed down and just gone over the same spot a couple of times rather than pushing like 3 times as hard the first pass. So there were definitely areas that were not nearly as clean cut, but that's also really just a skill that comes from practice, and I do not have any practice with using an X-Acto knife. But it was a fun shift. It was a change in the way I was physically interacting with my artwork, and I liked it. I found it really refreshing. But anyways, when I was using my X-Acto knife, I started getting a little bit of like a process for how I wanted to cut it out. I would go in and make sure that it was following first the curvature of my hand that it would naturally make. That way I could get the best kind of a curve, the smoothest line. And then I would just do individual little curves. Each time it curved, I would do it once and then curve right back out and then cut that chunk out. And then I would come back in and do that next curve, whatever size it is, and cut that chunk out. And I found that was a little bit better than just trying to carefully trace around it with all of the different curves. It gave me time to reset and make sure that my hand was positioned correctly and cut out the excess paper so that it wasn't getting in the way. But I think that I could certainly use a little bit more skill with an X-Acto knife. I think I would like to do more stuff like this, things that are a little bit more crafty. I like it. I like that interaction with my artwork in a different way. So that might be a skill that I'll do better at. But in the future, I might consider maybe a thinner paper, or maybe look at potentially different solutions. But this paper was very thick, and that was my biggest problem. And I was using a combination of actually 3 different cutting tools now that I think about it. I mostly used an X-Acto knife. I also used a utility knife for just these straight edges, like along her base and the 2 supports. And then I used scissors for long curves. I found it was easier to get, those long curves with scissors rather than an X-Acto knife, which I could have a lot more opportunities to get little wobbles and nicks in. But when I was using scissors, I could get a pretty good curve going. So this was a balance of using all three of those to get the perfect tool for what I was doing, or the most fit tool for each kind of cut that I needed. And I have some really exciting news. This weekend is the holiday sale over at my shop, and that means everything is 25% off, and that starts on Friday, that's November 23rd, and ends on Monday the 26th, 2018 at midnight. You don't need a code for this at all. It just starts on Friday. I'm really excited about this because that's 20% off everything from my prints, my originals, stickers, buttons. I really love being able to offer this little discount for you guys for the holiday season. And some of those older prints are going to be gone after the sale. So if you want to get an older piece, now is the time to do it. Well, now is the time to get anything really, because it's all on sale. But that's it for today. I will be back on Saturday with another video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.